Welcome back, one and all, to another day, another episode of The Damage Report with me, John Iadarola. And if you haven't been tuning in on Thursdays recently, you might not know, but we've switched things up a little bit. And this is now the domain ruled with an iron fist by the one, the only Francesca Fiorentini. Francesca, how's it going?
It's Thrantastic Thursdays. It's Thirsty Thursdays with Francesca. I'm sorry. Whatever it is.
Thursdays.
There's a lot of lisping, whatever it is. Thank you so much. Glad to be here. Shout out to the Dragon Squad who saw me last night in Pasadena at the Ice House. That was super fun. A lot of people were like, I'll see you tomorrow morning. And I was like, ew. But it was really, they were talking about
shows,
seeing me on the Damage Report.
Yes.
And so that was super fun.
How did it go?
It was so fun, so good. Our next show is March 26th. John is probably not gonna be there because he doesn't support live comedy, and that's fine.
I don't know. I just no live events. I don't think that people should go out anymore. I think you should be. You should do Discord shows, if that at all. No, I would love to go.
We did those. I mean,
Wednesdays I do a late show on Wednesday as it is, so I was pretty busy. But I wish I could be there, and hopefully very soon I will. But I love that you're making this a recurring thing. I think it's a great thing not only for you and for the community, but for our mental health collectively. So I appreciate you doing that. Okay, well, that said, look, everybody buckle up because you know, every day is a new fresh hell. And so we're gonna be going through a couple of different aspects of that throughout the show. We're gonna be talking about our, I was gonna say president, but I guess he's now a king, I suppose. That's what I'm hearing on social media. Donald Trump, we'll be talking about that. The head of the Teamsters, kind of deflating and talking about Trump. I don't know what that's about. Not a big fan of that, but we'll be showing it to you. The massive apocalyptic cuts that might soon be coming to Medicare and Medicaid, and a whole lot more. Coming up in the aftermath, we'll be talking about Jasmine Crockett, I think with some strong words on The View. Always good to see that. And is Dare being rebooted, as so many things from the 80s and 90s have been? As a kid who once won a Dare essay contest.
Oh boy.
I'm excited about that, so we'll be talking about that and much more. But starting off, we're gonna be doing things so very differently from how we normally do. We have a special treat for you. Joining us live to start things off on the Damage Report today, we have the executive director of MoveOn, an organization that everyone watching this, I'm sure, is very familiar with. Rahna Epting joins us now. Rahna, how's it going?
Oh, great to be here. Thank you.
It's great to have you here because you're gonna help us answer like the big question out there. Well, the second biggest question. The biggest question is, are we still a democracy? Do we still have a constitution? And no. But the other question is, what are we supposed to do about this? What are the Democrats supposed to do about this? And you're the executive director of MoveOn. Obviously, you guys get out there, you mix it up, you help people to organize and protest. You know, Jordan Yule's often on the show to talk about that. And so we're gonna turn to the Democrats, and you can give your thoughts about Trump as well. But first, I do wanna know, what has MoveOn been up to? What's your strategy? What's your philosophy after Donald Trump won re-election?
Yeah, well, a lot. This is a big moment. No doubt that there's a lot coming at us, and Donald Trump and Elon Musk are trying to throw everything and the kitchen sink at the American people. And so our focus, first and foremost, is to rebuild a winning coalition to win back political power in 26 and beyond. And that is a big project. That's a big endeavor. And so our superpower is MoveOn. We have, millions of members all across the country in every congressional district. We bring people together to take action at the same time, applied at a target to influence the decisions that people make in power. So in Congress, in the White House, what have you. So that's big picture. But really right now, this moment can feel very overwhelming. What everybody can do, everybody has a role in, is figuring out, how can I resist? How can I not comply with the dangerous policies and demands of this administration? Because the core to their strategy is fear and compliance. And that is what's gonna allow them to move quicker and faster as they implement cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, cuts to natural disaster relief, et cetera, you have it. So there is a role for everyone. And generally it's figure out, where can you not comply? Where can you push back? That is like an individual's role. But at MoveOn, what we're trying to do is like bring together collective power to apply pressure, specifically, first and foremost, on Republicans that are in vulnerable districts throughout this country. There's over a couple dozen that very slimly won their races, and they know that in 26 they're going to be under threat, especially as Donald Trump's numbers continue to go down, which they are, and his wildly unpopular agenda becomes implemented, and the public is not going to like it. And so we're applying pressure. We're building capacity in those districts. We're campaigning. We have a bunch of billboards up in a set of districts right now talking about how Trump needs to oust Elon Musk. He's no good. And talking about the cuts, but also it's not just Republicans. We need Democrats to leave all options on the table to push back and stop this agenda, and to not give an inch to Trump and Musk and what Republicans are trying to do. So that's the big picture, and our role is giving people an opportunity to take action in that.
Yeah,
interesting.
I just wanted to jump in.
Francesca.
Oh no, sorry, John, it's your show, but I wanted to jump in. I really love the strategy of dividing MAGA between Musk and Trump, because they are resisting that division. But I think among some Trump voters, that division is really important to exploit. Yes. Even though, to be honest with you, I don't think there is a difference. I mean, this is an administration that is willingly allowing the oligarchy to, move its mouth with their hands and do its bidding and, sell the country for parts. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm wondering also about a vision that can actually bring back the Democratic base, because I think we're in a moment that the Democratic Party has not been actually putting all options on the table. Sadly, they haven't been doing sit-ins and denying quorum, and some of the more, honestly, let's be real, like nonviolent civil disobedience, maybe even militant actions. They haven't taken those actions, and so I think there's a crisis of legitimacy here with the Democratic Party. So how do you reinvigorate Democratic voters and the ostensible voters who are very cynical, who are turning to this kind of despair because they see their leaders kind of folding?
Yeah, well, okay, so it's gonna take all of us. The people who are gonna save us or look in the mirror. It's all of us. And the way we push our elected leaders to fight for us is by calling them, by pressuring them, by talking to them, by asking them, what are you gonna do to protect me and my family? And it starts with constituent pressure, and that's what we're doing. We're asking people all around this country, no matter whether your district elected a Democrat or Republican or independent, call them, figure out what are they doing to fight for you and your family. And if they're a Democrat, there's one, there's one application. If you're a Republican, there's a whole nother set of levers that they have. Mm-hmm. And so it's not one size fits all. And we're seeing plenty of Democrats out there right now championing being protectors of the people, protectors of the Constitution, laying it all on the line. I think, a couple examples of fresh new leadership we're seeing is Representative Maxwell Frost. If you haven't had him on your show, highly recommend. Like, he wrote a great article about what Democratic House members can actually do. Mm-hmm. And he spoke to like civil disobedience about like, sometimes yes, sometimes that may not be smart. They've got to be in the House legislating, So I think it's really looking to those new leaders, Senator Chris Murphy, Chris Van Hollen, Representative David Min, Pat Ryan. These are all folks, if you watch them, they're leading in a way that we deserve and that we need right now. And so we should be celebrating that and getting their backs.
Yeah, quick follow up to that. So you use the word leading there, and I agree that that's what they're trying to do. Do you see any indication that Democratic actual leadership sees that, cares about that, is going to embrace that? Because I see, I like what AOC is saying about Donald Trump and Elon Musk, I find 1,000 times more effective and wiser than what I'm getting out of Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer. But and she's generating, I think, a lot of attention with what she's doing, but I don't see any signs the Democratic leadership is like, oh, that's good, let's do that, let's embrace her. Do you see any sign of that with either the fact that Maxwell Frost is, drawing a following for what he's saying, and there are a lot of people calling in, trying to influence their elected leaders? Is there any sign that it's working right now?
I think it is working. I think Democrats broadly are still finding their footing. I think that the way we influence leadership is through our members of Congress and getting them on board and building that unified opposition. And I don't envy the job of being a leader in leadership in Congress. I think it's really difficult, but there are multiple ways to peel this onion or skin this. What do you call it? Skin this cat. What's the phrase?
Cats, onions. You can use either.
Whatever analogy we want. Like, you can apply pressure on leadership, or you can just call the person you helped elect and get them on board to help leadership actually unify in opposition. So I think it's both and I have faith that Democrats will rally for the moment. They're going to have to see that demand coming from their districts to get there.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question that I've been thinking a lot about. So we've heard very different positions on this from like Hakeem Jeffries, Jon Stewart, which is how much should we be raising hell? And where? How targeted should it be versus how broad based? And so Hakeem Jeffries is of the very old school Democrat, if we got to keep our powder dry for sometime in the late 3000s or whatever. And Jon Stewart, even at least a couple weeks ago, was saying, we can't freak out about everything. And I agree about that. But if things are happening every day that seem freak outable, then it seems like, does it make sense to cede that ground, to not lose it over that? And I guess the reason I'm asking you this question is, it's both a question that we need to know how the Democratic leadership is going to, like, are they going to protest? Are they going to, around all these issues? But you guys have to decide at MoveOn, like, what are you gonna do protests over? What are you gonna do campaigns over? Is it a Muslim ban? Do we do it for banned books? Like, what do you think in terms of how broad should our outrage or attempting to get people fired up over this be? How targeted should it be?
Yeah. So I mean, first of all, at MoveOn, one of our jobs, one thing that we need to do, and I'd argue every leader that has any position of power needs to do, is educate folks around what's happening. I think part of the challenge we have at this moment, which is not the same as when Trump was in office in the first time. Part of the challenge we have is information is so dispersed. There is no one source of truth anymore. There are people in complete bubbles and information like vacuums, so there is no shared sense of the threat. We have base Democrats and progressives who are highly alarmed. And we have an entire additional set of folks that are either checked out or overwhelmed and not sure what to do. And our job is to sound the alarm. And that's what we want to see from, whether it's organizations like MoveOn or elected leaders. We need everyone sounding the alarm. And then in a way that compels people to join us and that doesn't position us as like hair on fire, crying wolf. And that's the challenge, because Donald Trump says 10 things and he does 7 of them, and you don't know which one's real. So, tariffs on week 1 was a big deal, and then he backtracked on Canada and Mexico. So, but I think like being able to bring people along with us when we talk about the threats and what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are trying to do is super important. And I think that's kind of the space we're in right now. But I know that as soon as these cuts start impacting people, if they are successful, we're gonna see a mass unrest around what this administration is trying to do.
Yeah, I mean,
continue.
Oh, go ahead, John.
No, feel free.
I guess, yeah, I'm curious about also like broader vision. I know that's not necessarily what MoveOn does, and I feel like the rapid response is so necessary and so great. But I am also curious in terms of maybe 2 questions around vision and community, right? So much of what the right offers is a very clear vision of a white Christian ethno state. Like it's a very terrifying vision, but it's super clear. Let's hollow out the government. Everyone's a bureaucrat. So what is that counter vision of how we actually say, no, government can be and is good and it's made up of people? And then in addition to that, an identity, right? Sort of a place of belonging, right? Like, does MoveOn work with churches or faith groups or schools or anything? Like, how are you all deepening, as well as we see that so much what the right offers is like kind of this like political home, even if it's just among a bunch of trolls?
Yeah. I always say the job of the right is way easier than the job of the rest of us.
Totally.
It's easy to scapegoat people, to lay blame, and to project yourself as a protector from those scary, scary folks. And I think that's what they're doing. And when you have no morals and you're not trying to build a society that works for everybody, their job is easy peasy. Ours is hard. We're actually trying to build a democracy that functions and responds to the needs of the people within the context of a capitalist society. Like,
right.
That is not a joke, and that is not easy to do. And I would argue capitalism is the reason kind of we got here where we are today. But plenty of folks have a vision. I think that the most promising vehicle for a vision is a candidate. And I think organizations, MoveOn has one. We want to build a country where everyone can thrive, where people are welcome, where we take care of one another, where there's honor and dignity for every human being. That's a wonderful vision, but there is no candidate that's proselytizing that. That's not building a brand, that's building an identity that people can resonate and respond to. So I really think we need to be looking towards 2028 and who are the future presidential nominees that we want to get behind and stoke and nurture and move forward with. And that we cannot take 2028 lightly. We have to take that very seriously. We can't be in the same position where we don't have a choice in who that nominee is. And we should be thinking about who should we be encouraging to put their hat in the ring.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And my big fear, it's the same sort of fear, only elevated, that I had the first time around is, a lot of progressives are like, they're stinging because of the loss, like that we could have had, someone better, theoretically. And now it's gonna be really bad. So maybe the silver lining is people will be crying out for something much better. But maybe they'll see Joe Biden as significantly better than a continuation of what they'd had for 4 years. Like, that's my fear is, sure, maybe this leads to them wanting, an AOC or something, or maybe Gavin Newsom looks 1,000 times better than 4 more years of JD Vance or Tucker Carlson or whatever. So that's my
that's kind of what happened in 2020, I would argue.
Yeah,
that's what I was referencing before with Joe Biden. Like, all of a sudden, Joe Biden, I guess, looks pretty good when 3,000 people a day are dropping dead from COVID. So that's sort of my fear. I want to just briefly return to, you were saying earlier about how regular people should look for opportunities to resist. And I want to make sure that we always give people, our viewers, something that they can do. So I'd like some thoughts from you about the ways that can manifest. Like, I'm thinking about, there are some people in government, these prosecutors that have been resigning, head of Social Security's, like all these people are resigning. Now, most people are not in a position to do something like that. There's been big ideas thrown out, like the possibility of some sort of general strike or the possibility of a mass refusal to pay taxes, those sorts of things. For regular people who might not hold government positions, what are some things that they might be able to do?
Well, okay, so we have a couple of things, or several things. I mean, go to moveon.org/recess. There are events that we are holding right now as we speak in front of members and senators' offices, telling them, what are you gonna do to fight for us and prevent these cuts to our lifelines and our communities? Folks can sign up there. You can host your own event. You can attend one in your area. We'll be doing them throughout congressional recesses throughout the year, but also just signing up on our list. Like, the core purpose of MoveOn is to give everybody out there opportunities to take action together with millions of other people in a timely way. So, for example, when the OMB memo came out and threatened to freeze all the federal funding and federal grants, within 24 hours, MoveOn was able to generate 10,000 calls into the Senate to say, don't vote for these nominees, stop the nomination of Russell Vogt, et cetera, et cetera. So we find those moments where we say, okay, here, if tens of thousands of people act together, this is where we can have impact. Not one single Democratic senator voted for Russell Vogt. Unfortunately, his nomination went through because we don't own the House, or we don't have the majority in the House, but it was a big moment. And I think it caught the attention of Democratic senators and lit a fire under them. And they started like moving differently in the Senate thereafter, so.
Okay. I just want to ask one more question from the audience, and I can't type in Twitch right now, so this is the only way I can communicate with Brett, who's my co-host generally on Fridays. He wants to know, and I know that I don't believe that MoveOn generally does much in the area of endorsements or anything, but you had mentioned, like trying to find the right person to rally behind. Do you have candidates that you think could be that person that are making the right moves now? What do you think?
Oh, you mean for president?
For 2028.
Yeah.
Or to lead the the resistance to Donald Trump up until then, at the very least.
Look, I do think I don't have a golden answer for Brett, but I will say I think this is a really positively shifting, changing moment for the Democratic Party. Who the leaders of 2026 and 2020 are going to be, I don't think we quite know yet. And I think that's exciting. Like we never predicted in 2007 that Barack Obama would be the presidential nominee. And because of kind of the moment we're in, I think it's presenting opportunities, as many challenges, but opportunities for people to step up and show leadership that we hadn't seen before. So yes, AOC is out there and she's great, but there's also some new faces and new voices that I think that we're gonna be really pleasantly surprised to see emerge out of this rubble and help us rebuild a winning coalition that's durable heading into 26 and 28.
I super agree with that.
So. Yes. And I hope that there's much of the country left to do that in 4 years. But
yes.
But that's something we're gonna have to continue to fight over. It has been a pleasure, Rahna Epting, having you on. As we go though, if people want to get involved, want to see what MoveOn's up to, how they could help out, what would be the best way for them to do that?
You should go to moveon.org/recess. You can sign up for all actions around holding, Republicans and accountable, and helping engage in this fight to protect these lifelines into our communities that they're trying to cut right now. So,
awesome, thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, we do have a lot of news that we're gonna be covering. We have to take our first break though, so stick around. We'll be talking about the big stories of the day after this. I was just thinking, it's so strange. I was trying to play devil's advocate with myself. Like we need to find candidates or whatever. Like I'm looking at what the right is doing, and it's just whoever's on Fox News. It's just they're gonna fill everyone. Imagine if we were like, well, obviously Chris Hayes is front runner. We gotta have Chris Hayes, Rachel Maddow probably for president.
Oh God, Chris Hayes would lose. So
the only example of that I think is some people want Jon Stewart.
Sure.
Now I would say that's, I guess, sort of similar, but he's done explicitly political things. He has organized people. I think that his impact is not limited to what he does behind the desk, I think. So that
he's too much of an he's too much of an elite, and I love Jon Stewart so
No, I'm not saying he would or should. I'm just saying that's the closest devil's advocate thing I can think of.
Absolutely. And I also don't think we're gonna have elections in 4 years. So I'm just gonna put that out there. I think they will not hold elections. So
I understand that. Again, as I said on the show yesterday, we still have to proceed as if there will be though.
Sure. Everybody go through the motions. It's going to be.
Well, what's the alternative?
No. We should, but like also if they are gutting any kind of foreign interference protections, if Starlink is going to be the one running all elections come 2028, like we have very few guarantees that these elections, if they do happen, would be free and fair. My guess is they'll happen, but they won't be free and fair. You could argue that with the amount of voter suppression of 2024, that election was also not free and fair. But I just don't see us getting to 2028, honestly, in one piece. I have hope that many other countries have ousted their dictators ahead of elections.
Sure. Look, I think we'll have a style of elections at the very least. We've been wanting more diversity. Why not have Russian style elections? Get a little bit of that Eastern flavor into our election systems. No, but I did just see, and maybe we'll talk about it more tomorrow on the show. They put a pause on like the election cybersecurity group.
Yep.
Now they'll say it's because we got to get in there and check to see what they're doing, but I don't know. It seems like you're taking our shields down weirdly. God, the election integrity stuff has always been such utter BS. But anyway, let's read a few comments. Benjamin Morrill, as always, starting us off, gifting a membership, which I much appreciate. Thank you. Yoda Suave, member for 4 full years, says, when I can't watch TDR live and watch on my phone later in the day, I like to put the speed on X2 because it's like a Marvel What If episode. What if Ben Shapiro had a moral compass? That's pretty funny. That's pretty good. I like that. Are you a ×2 or a ×1.5?
No, maybe on some podcasts, but no. I'm regular speed. It bothers me otherwise.
Minimum 1.2, minimum. My brain works fast, man. You gotta keep going. Okay, there's a lot happening, and I cannot get this to ever stay in the position it's supposed to be in. Okay, well, anyway, let's see if I can do this. Neil Whittington says, this is why Section 3 of the 14th AMDT was written, so that tyrants don't hold offices for which they're disqualified to hold. Amendment was written. What happened on January 6th? I know, Neil, and I know you've made that point multiple times since it happened, but he's the president. That's what's true right now. The question is whether he will ever not be the president while he's alive, but for now, he definitely is.
Yeah.
Okay, Tattered Reaperist says, I'm one of the lead onboard coordinators at MoveOn. My name is Nicole. Please sign up. That's awesome. Look, people out in the audience also in important positions in MoveOn. Great to see. Thank you for what you're doing. And with that said, we're gonna return to only the most annoying news. Okay, so while we're doing the show live, Brett is messaging on Twitch. And as I already said, I can't reply. You can ask your wife why. It's this whole big thing, but Brett's spicy out there. Anyway, let's talk about other spicy stuff going on in the news. Donald Trump doesn't want you to call him a dictator, even though he's referred to himself as a day one dictator. No, I think he'd prefer king. It's a different flavor, a bit more old timey. Because the White House official Twitter account posted this yesterday: congestion pricing is dead, Manhattan, and all of New York is saved. That was the only thing threatening New York. Long live the king. And it's a photo of him with a crown on or whatever. And let me just jump out ahead of what many people are probably thinking. Hey, he's just saying that to make you mad. He's just trolling you. Here's what is true. He's saying that to make us mad. Here's what is not true. He's just saying that to make us mad. They're different things. If this was day one of his first term and he hasn't done much and he posted something like that, then maybe we could freak out and I'd be the hyperbolic lib on the internet or whatever. But when he's already not complying with what judges have ordered him to do, when he's already breaking the law and the firings that he's doing, when he's already said that he is the only interpreter of the law or the Constitution that actually matters, and I'm probably already forgetting authoritarian things that he's done, wielding the DOJ as a tool to make Eric Adams a vassal of his in New York, threatening prosecution against congresspeople like AOC for telling people what their rights are. I could go and do every day, go on and on. You can say he's calling himself a king to make us mad. You cannot say he's just calling himself a king, because he's not just doing anything. This is not just trolling. That is how he functions. And it's not so much about it making us mad as it makes his base happy, because they are, like, you take any MAGA person, you scratch them just the slightest bit and it's a monarchist under that. That's always been the case. It's now explicit. They want a king. They want to be dominated by daddy who's home again. And so I understand, Francesca, that we probably should not get like, oh, he tweeted something. But like, that is what he's doing. He is ruling as if he's the only government official with literally any power or authority or anything. So anyway, what do you think? We sometimes disagree on this stuff.
I've said, no, I agree with you. And this is not a distraction. This is exactly as you broke it down. I think rightfully we should all be deeply disturbed. And as someone who goes on Piers Morgan, an actual monarchist who is so hot for monarchy and somehow talks about American democracy every day. Yes, I can tell you that you scratch any MAGA person, most of them, especially the mouthpieces, let's be real, and they're ultimately monarchists. And they might call it monarchy, they might call it king, they might call it CEO. It doesn't matter. They believe in, the Unitarian executive theory or whatever the hell legalese means. Anything I say or do goes. I am above the law. I'm above all of Congress. I make the laws, not Congress. I decide what gets funded, not Congress. And he's acting like that. And look, I'm sorry, buddy, you're in the wrong country if you want to do that. But again, here I am just saying that, and he's actually the one obliterating the Constitution as we speak. Long live the king, may I remind everyone, is what Scar said in The Lion King when he pushed Mufasa off a cliff into a stampede of wildebeest, okay? Long live the king. Like, this is terrifying behavior, okay? That is where we're at right now. So yes, we need to assemble our little crew. I'm really on my Hakuna Matata, like little dissociative trip over here. But we need to get back to the den. And I don't know, John. This is what I mean about vision. This has always been their vision. It is Project 2025. It is gutting of the federal workforce. It is basically making the president king. And I wish, in some ways, I wish Biden would have done this. Because if he had done that, every Republican would be like, oh, our democracy is very important. 100%. Here's why, we're gonna take power away from the executive branch. Good, do that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so again, I'll do the thing I do every day. Does AOC get to declare herself queen if she gets elected? Do they think that? Does anyone think that? Does Kilmeade think that? No, literally none of them think that. But again, it's not, the flaw is in thinking that because we are driven by our principles, everybody must have principles, right?
Right.
And on a certain level they do. They want to win. That's the principle. That's it. They'll win democratically if they think they can, but they don't think that they can anymore. And so while we're pointing out that this is deeply un-American, deeply anti-democratic and all that, let's also point out that it's deeply bitch-ass behavior. The reason they want to be dominated by Big Daddy is not a single one of these Republicans, especially their mouthpieces, their elected officials, thinks that they can actually win in the marketplace of ideas. They have no confidence whatsoever in their message, in their platform, in their ability, in their charisma, in their rhetoric, in literally anything. And because they do not want to compete in an equal marketplace, that's why they want, in the job market, they want white people to be elevated above all others because they don't think that they can compete. They can compete. They don't have that actual confidence. And electorally, the exact same thing. They want it to be set up so they automatically win, so they never actually have to grind it out like regular people do. There are people who are driven by entitlement and fear. We all know that that's primarily what occupies their skull. But for a lot of these guys, I think that that's now overflown. And if you were able to somehow unzip their sack, I think you just find more fear clustered up in there as well. And so this is un-American. It's unacceptable. We need to get him out of there. And also, I'll just say in a general sense, not attached to any potential actions. And people who've been watching the show for the last week can probably guess what I'm going to say. He who saves his country breaks no laws. I keep hearing that and saying it. And so just bear that in mind. Anyway, with that said, why don't we move on to our next topic? There have been a lot of people and organizations bowing down to Donald Trump, surrendering before day one, surrendering before it's necessary, and it sucks in every case. And this is plenty of politicians, a lot of Democratic leadership, basically every tech billionaire in the country, most media outlets, most of the big newspapers. But I didn't really think that the biggest labor leaders, the biggest union leaders would be a part of that. And this is perhaps a little bit premature. But I don't know, what I've seen recently out of Sean O'Brien, head of the Teamsters, doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence about his willingness to stand up for working people, union members, when there's mass firings going on all over. That said, I want to play it so we can figure it out together. Here's a little bit of what he had to say on Fox News.
Look, we don't want to see anybody get laid off. We don't want to see anybody losing their jobs. But he thinks he's within his right. There are court proceedings, and ultimately the courts are going to decide whether what he's doing is lawful or not. I know that there is a lot of fat in the government he's trimming, and I don't think people are opposed to that. And look, I tell people all the time, let's take a look at the 101st day and where we're at that point in time.
He's a tough guy. Normally, that's his whole thing. He's both a leader, literally, he's a leader, and a tough guy. And his answer is, let's just go to sleep for the next couple months. Let's just see what's left of our Constitution, what's left of the government workforce, which, as we'll show you, has a lot of union members in it, months out. he thinks he has a legal leg to stand on. That's what Sean O'Brien said about Donald Trump. Do you have any thoughts about that, Sean O'Brien? Because I know that he's violating the law with many of these firings. These are independent agencies. It's not up to him to get rid of their members or their leadership. Yeah, no, he'll go to court and he'll say that he does, and maybe the Supreme Court will be like, yeah, you're the king, you get to do whatever you want. But I already have an opinion about that. Do you have an opinion about that? What do you think about these firings? Sean O'Brien says, well, he says there's a lot of waste and a lot of fat. Yeah, do you think that's what he's doing when he fires these people, is getting rid of waste? Do you think that's what he's doing? Do you think that's why he's doing that? Do you have an opinion about any of the insane things that are being done on a daily basis, or all of the many lines that have been crossed, again, on a daily basis? Why did you go on Fox News just be like, everybody calm down? We don't need leadership to do that. We have Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries to tell us to just calm down if we want. We don't need Sean O'Brien for that. And by the way, the Teamsters represent over 200,000 public sector workers across North America. Hundreds of thousands. By the way, Teamsters has 1.3 million members. That's a big chunk of their total membership. Will any of them even be left in a few months? And I'm not just saying this on behalf of the libs that are part of it. There are plenty of conservatives that are also having their jobs wiped out, often without even the fig leaf of thought being given to it. The bird flu inspectors, they're gone. Oh, the people protecting our nuclear weapons and all that, get them the hell out of here. Oh wait, these are both disasters? I hope we can get them back. And he doesn't have a thing to say about the need to be more judicious in these firings, more careful of who we fire.
Yeah,
I'm not the leader, Francesca. I know he supposedly knows better than me, but I find this to be super weak sauce.
Oh yeah, he's getting played. I mean, I think what's amazing about Sean O'Brien is he's been thinking that he's the one playing 7D chess. He's playing everybody else. Nah, he's completely getting played. It's been a month of the Trump administration. We know exactly what they're doing. This is the boss class. If Sean O'Brien wants to make the Teamsters the last people who are building the robots on Elysium, cool, that's fine. But the rest of us want to live. The rest of us, want to fight this power grab. So where is he at? And this is a very revelatory moment. It is who are going to be our leaders, as we just talked about with the director of MoveOn, and who are the people who are going to fall in line and obey in advance. And Sean O'Brien has shown that he's going to obey in advance. And here's the thing that Sean O'Brien does, and he does it to his Teamsters. He does it whenever he talks to leftists or any progressive media outlets. He code switches. What does that mean? It means that you tell people different things depending on who you're talking to. So he's on Fox saying, I don't see anything illegal. I mean, I don't know, that's for the courts. Let's just give him time, right? But then if he is talking to a progressive news outlet, he's talking to, another outlet, he's gonna be like, I'm gonna stand up for my workers and we'll see what happens. And I gotta represent, he's changing what he's saying in order to, and that's slimy. That's slimy, and there's no backbone in that. This guy doesn't believe in anything, and I understand. Look, let me just give an anecdote. There are union leaders who know that they've got MAGA membership. That's well proven, that's fine. But you're a leader. I remember after Trump was elected in 2016, I did a union gig for the United, I think, Electrical Workers of America. And I did this union gig in Vegas, and the leaders of the union, they come in there and there's a lot of people here. I think there's gonna be some Trump voters, but give them hell. And it was such a funny moment because you could tell that the leadership said, no, this administration is bad for workers. This administration wants to make sure workers are on their ass. They might want to make sure they are desperate. They want to make sure. In this same interview, we're gonna talk about how he was like, yeah, right to work laws are fine. Right to work states are fine. Right to work has dismantled union membership in this country strategically. Not just oh, we like right to work, but no. This is a plan to dismantle unions, and Sean O'Brien is on board with that. It's despicable.
Well, yeah, I hadn't seen that particular part. And look, I have not been following everything he's been saying. I don't know if there's anything else in other interviews that's better, but I don't know, as an outsider, and you go on the news to reach new people. So I'm experiencing this like most people will. This doesn't look like leadership. This looks like being co-opted. This feels like an Eric Adams type situation. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
I mean, is he gonna give up his workers? Is he gonna rat them out to ICE? I mean, that's another question, right? What is the union complicity going to be in this mass deportation campaign?
Why don't we rat them out up until day 101, How about that?
Sure.
Do that and see what happens after. Anyway, so that was obviously very frustrating. Now, I think we should probably take our second break. We have some big stuff to talk about, the future of some of the most important and most popular government programs. That future is now very much up for grabs. We'll have that and more after this.
I'm raging.
Yeah, so not every bit of news is good. I did see a poll. I wasn't able to find it afterward. I wanted to cover it on the show and I lost the link. But you know, like the news fatigue that we were talking about after the election, apparently we're back. Apparently Democrats, progressives, the news fatigue has worn off and a lot of people are paying attention again. I mean, I feel like that, I don't know if you can attest to on the Bitchuation Room, but we've been seeing that too. And that's one of the most important things. Like we're bound by our mission statement to continue the fight, but doing it and having most people be like, I don't care to fight. I don't even want to know what's going on. It's too depressing. That would have been a rough 4 years. So it's good to see that people don't just want to give up. Not everybody's acting like Sean O'Brien in this particular case. Anyway, with that said, let's read some comments and thank some members. D's Nuts Be a Dragon became a tier 3 member, or it's super unclear what some of these messages might have already been, but thank you for being a member. By the way, 30 minutes after the close of the aftermath today, we will be doing our members hangout for the month. So tier 3 members like D's Nuts Be a Dragon could perhaps be there. Thank you. Jonathan, welcome to tier 2 membership. Thank you. Starry Eyed Dragon gifted a membership. Thank you so much. Bianca, the Purple Binky Dragon Lopez gifted one too. Thank you. Okay. Zim74 says, still waiting for Brett's Elmer Fudd impression. Well, unfortunately, we are gonna have to wait because he's not actually on TDR this Friday, so he's not gonna be able to do it there, but maybe he can do it in the chat. Bianca also said in a super chat, trying to stay warm here in Austin. TDR is a warm hug. We try to be, and I hope that Austin is treating you well. I enjoyed my 5 or so years of living there. Nick the Silver Flame Dragon says, Teamster guy is proof that even the most badass tomcat mellows out after they get neutered. Damn, you're the cat expert. So I won't speak to that, but anyway, I think your cat's a female anyway. Okay, Gary Cooper says, Jon Stewart's an entertainer, he's not a statesman. Pitting entertainment people in charge has not worked out well for America. Now, I do understand that in general, but I'm saying he has used his platform to do a lot of concrete good, especially in the area of healthcare. You're coming out of 9/11 and everything. Like, he's not just an entertainer.
His politics are super solid. His politics being left of Democrat, Stewart's politics are amazing.
So
I just don't think that he's gonna have to start doing a lot of like rallies and changing his tune. Because he does just have like oh yeah, this guy who's kind of an elite, let's be real, has been in the space for decades, has been made for a long time. Like, that's gonna be hard to shake.
He has, and I know we don't have a lot of time. Do you think that most regular people see him as an elite? I mean, I know they've seen him on TV, but the stuff that he talks about, I feel like that had a pretty broad and young audience back in the day.
He will, if again, what I'm saying is, if he wants to run, he's gonna have to speak to the same younger people who are now, parents, who were captivated by his anti-Iraq war stance and his like anti-establishment stance back in the day. He can't run in this same sort of like, I'm gonna be sort of like the middle of the road Democrat. He needs to start talking about capitalism. Yes, he needs to start talking about corporate greed. He needs to start doing some of the outside agitation that I think, and he's super smart. So like that to me is where it stands. But if he's just gonna do like his podcast from his home, no, for real, I'm being honest. Like, I really like him, but like he's gonna need to get that base to ride or die for him. And I'm not sure if the base is still ride or die for Stewart in the way that they were.
Okay, well, perhaps we'll see, probably not. And with that, we return to the news. Okay, everybody, if you're just joining us now, please hit the like button as we jump into this. Trump has once again been caught in a particularly filthy lie, this one being an important one because it could potentially harm something like 72 million Americans who rely on Medicaid. And so let's see how quickly he can flip-flop on this important issue.
Look, Social Security won't be touched. Other than if there's fraud or something, we're going to find it's going to be strengthened, but won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is going to be touched.
Nothing.
You don't have to. Now, if there are illegal migrants in the system, we're going to get them out of the system and all of that fraud, but it's not going to be touched.
Okay, so it's not going to be touched. It's not going to be touched. It's not going to be touched, and you can take that to the bank and see what citing a thing that Donald Trump said gets you out of said bank. Probably nothing. I never really understood that metaphor. But no, he's already backtracking massively on that because he can go on this interview with Sean Hannity and he can sit there with his vice president. Sorry, I'm kidding. He would never do an interview with his vice president. Does anyone even know where JD Vance is? Is it not strange that he's doing all of these appearances with Elon Musk and JD Vance is off somewhere?
JD Vance is throwing his heart at far right German parties, like events.
100%. Well, importantly on this issue, yeah, he was just lying in that interview because he takes to Truth Social and says the House and Senate are doing a spectacular job of working together as one unified and unbeatable team. And he's saying that as aspirationally, they're not working on the same plan. He just wants them to. And you know that because he goes on to say, the team, however, unlike the Lindsey Graham version, the House resolution implements my full America First agenda, everything, not just parts of it. We need both chambers to pass the House budget to kickstarts in quotation marks. I don't know what those are meant to imply. And so blah, 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 we get one big, beautiful bill. Okay, so if you haven't been following this, and I understand why you might not, okay, well, what's the important difference between the House bill and the Senate bill? And why is he aligning himself so closely with the House bill, which gives everything he wants? You saw it in that message. Well, it cuts a hell of a lot out of the programs that he says must not be touched. And he apparently loves it. He loves it so much that he prefers that version to the Senate version, which does not include cuts of that nature, that size. And so he posted that and his aides, they're scrambling to try to figure out what does he mean? I thought we weren't gonna be endorsing cuts to these programs. So they put out a statement. This is from a White House spokesperson. The Trump administration is committed to protecting Medicare and Medicaid while slashing the waste, fraud, and abuse within those programs, reforms that will increase efficiency and improve care for beneficiaries. Oh, good, okay, so now I'm reassured. He seemed to be backtracking what he said, but now they've confirmed, doubled down, they're not gonna be touching those programs. But after that article was published, he sent an updated statement, that spokesperson, that omitted the mention of Medicare, instead saying only that the administration sought to protect Medicaid while slashing the waste, fraud, and abuse within the program. So, you know, a little bit of back and forth constantly. And if your life is dependent on these programs, maybe you're not happy that they're being so flippant with it. And the cuts that we're talking about are not small. The House Budget Committee approved a budget resolution that calls for as much as $880 billion in Medicaid cuts over 10 years, which the spokesperson just reassured us again after backtracking won't be cut. They want to cut over almost $1 trillion in 1 decade. They also want to cut federal food assistance and Pell grants. So poor people who need help in getting enough food to eat, students who want to make a better life for themselves, F you, F all of you, all the way. And so all of this would be done to partly offset a $4.5 trillion tax cut for the wealthiest Americans. So he is, of course you're gonna go on Sean Hannity and lie about this. If you were to go and say, I'm gonna screw over tens of millions of MAGA voters and take away their health care so that Jeff Bezos could get a tax cut, that would hardly be popular. And so I'm not surprised that he lies. It does suck that the guy on the other side of the interview is Sean Hannity, who's supposed to be doing an impersonation of like a journalist or whatever. And he has no follow-ups. He doesn't care about any of this. He's helping him to launder this horrific and wildly unpopular plan, Francesca.
I mean, it's not only a massive power grab, it is a massive wealth grab from poor working Americans, people who paid into Social Security, paid into these programs via their taxes, who benefit from these programs, who rely on the programs, and of course are still working. That is what this is. It is denying them that access to any government function, any social safety net, so that Elon Musk and his cronies and the other oligarchs can write off their $600,000 jets, $600 million jets. They're very expensive, or like they're like 200. It's fine. I mean, you can find like a good one for like 250, but like this is what it is. That is exactly what this is. It is a wealth transfer. It's a power grab and a wealth transfer. It's not saving anything what's so ironic about him saying, oh, we're not gonna cut it unless there's waste or fraud. The other day, Doggy thought it found that 83% of Medicare recipients were dead, right? I believe it was Medicare, right? That like 83%. So that they just cut the majority of people who are receiving Medicare because they didn't understand how the basic system works. They didn't understand that they were reading the computing wrong. So that's the kind of like waste, fraud, and abuse. We're relying on these tweens who don't understand the government systems that they're trying to hollow out to find waste, fraud, and abuse. So people are getting, like we just talked about, cut preemptively without even looking into not only what they do, but whether or not they are receiving checks, even though they're already dead and things like this. That was for Social Security. So we don't even trust the people, like, how can you trust them? You can't trust them on any level, John. I just don't like, for me, we should be running billboards about this. Every Democrat should be taking a billboard out about this is a wealth transfer of your money to the rich. That's all 100%. This is.
I agree, and they do this all the time. They've just taken words that meant something and now it means a different thing. They're saying we're getting a savings. We're gonna have a savings. That's not how savings works. That's like if you had some sort of addiction to buying stuff on Amazon, you spend way too much money. And so my solution to that is after you pay for it, I just stop the delivery of the product. That's not a save. You already paid for all of these things. Now you just don't get the benefit of that. How is that a savings for you? It's madness. And also unpopular. If we, just for 1 sec, we'll jump to graphic 8. Trump voters are incredibly favorable towards Medicaid. I'm somewhat surprised by that, but glad to see it. They don't want cuts to these programs either. So add that to the list of the things that Trump and the Republicans are doing that even their own base hate the idea of. Now, with that said, I want to talk about the Johnson angle, but we don't really have time. We have one more story to talk about, but I believe you had an announcement before we do that.
Oh yeah, I have a really quick announcement that everyone should know about. This is really important. Breaking news, Francesca Fiorentini is gonna be doing a stand-up show in Sacramento. And everyone should come see me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it now. But yes, FrancescaFiorentini.com for tickets. Sacramento Punchline, March 16th. Me and my husband, Matt Lieb, are gonna co-headline that. So come out, Sac, let's go. We're going to Gavin Newsom's house, all right? We're going to Gavin's house to tell him he cannot run.
That's funny. I'm gonna be in Sacramento like 2 weeks before that, unfortunately.
What?
I don't think I can stick around for the show, but I hope that it goes very well.
You can find an Airbnb. People in Sac will house you.
In this economy? Okay, well, with that said, why don't we move on to one more topic to close out the hour. Fresh off of earlier this week, accurately diagnosing Elon Musk as I believe a parasitic illegal immigrant, Steve Bannon is back with more points that are at least in some ways weirdly accurate for Steve Bannon. And so he wants to talk, it's kind of continuing on with his feud about Elon Musk, but he wants to talk about the oligarchs, which I'm glad. Bernie Sanders has been talking about it a lot. A lot of people are Googling what's an oligarchy. Well, that's what we have, so you should probably learn about it. Well, Bannon doesn't think that these oligarchs are as trustworthy as many Republicans seem to think. Take a look.
You can tell President Trump doesn't totally trust the oligarchs. And by the way, those oligarchs, and people at CNN are understanding that, just like they've turned on you now, right? They've abandoned the progressive left. They will abandon us in the same thing. They seek power. Right now, their feeling is they can see the math and they see that we have a building coalition. So they're with us, but only temporarily.
Okay, and so apparently he's not just talking about Elon Musk, although he is definitely talking about Elon Musk. There you could perhaps throw like a Jeff Bezos, a Mark Zuckerberg, and many of the others. Basically every oligarch, particularly tech oligarch, has lined up behind Donald Trump, which I think, image-wise should put the lie to the idea that this is some sort of anti-establishment party or something. It's populist. No, not if every rich person in America supports it. But anyway, he doesn't believe that it's a long-term play. He thinks that Elon Musk and the others will turn on MAGA like they turned on the progressives. Francesca, you remember when all of the richest people in America supported progressives, right? Remember that when you got all those checks and all that support and advertising and everything? Anyway, so that's obviously BS. But do you think that there's something to what he said, or is this just him trying to get some power relative to Elon Musk with Trump?
Look, I'm of two minds. Number one, I think Bannon's a total opportunist, and he's just angry that it's not him inside the castle, it's Elon Musk. So Bannon is like, well, let's get back to our roots, just like real racism and like, because he's super on board with all of the mass deportations. He's super on board with the stochastic terrorism that this administration's engenders. He loves that kind of stuff, but he's just mad that he's not one of the oligarchs, right? But if he was, he'd be all good. I mean, you don't see Stephen Miller out there getting mad because Stephen Miller's inside making policy and Bannon isn't. So I think that has to be said. That being said, I do think not the MAGA base. The MAGA base is a cult. The MAGA base will never turn on Trump, but the broad okay, I'm gonna vote for Trump over Kamala Harris because I don't like the way the economy is going. That voter is definitely a voter that will turn on Trump. And I do think that voter is gettable, but not by, again, the Bannon right, but by progressives, by a broad coalition, by what we were talking about with the director of MoveOn, right? By something that feels visionary, that feels like it centers their economic realities, that has a counter narrative to the oligarchy, that actually talks about the problems that everyone is facing. Whether it's housing, whether it's food, whether it's education, whatever it is, whether it's not feeling like you're gonna ever own a house in your lifetime, all of these things. So like that is what we have to do. So I don't know, John, I don't know about you, but I'm less obsessed about like the MAGA base will turn. They won't. They really won't turn on him. It's just the general voters that could.
Yeah, and it doesn't, like at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. The MAGA base is not enough to win a national election on.
Yeah.
We know that.
Exactly.
Even it's the independents he got. And even that was the narrowest possible victory. 250,000 votes across 3 swing states and it would have gone the other way. So we don't have to get those people. And I agree with Francesca, a lot of them we never will. Maybe a few, maybe 1 in 10, 1 in 20, I don't know. But I wouldn't waste all of our effort on that when the independents I think will be much easier to peel off. Those, Trump AOC voters, for instance, that we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Now, before we close things out, I do want to just mention what effect these oligarchs are having on Trump. Well, according to Emerson, at least, and these numbers are higher than some I've seen, Trump's presidential approval rating earlier in February was at 48%. We're gonna dive into other polls in the aftermath, but Doggy is at 41%.
Ooh.
And that's the initial views. A lot of people don't even know what it's doing yet. Oh, and also important breaking news as of last night, at least. Musk is in charge of Doggy, apparently. So we'd been told earlier that day that he wasn't in charge. They asked the spokesperson, so who is in charge? And she wouldn't tell us, which was cool for this radically transparent organization. And now Trump says, no, Elon Musk is actually in charge of it.
Oh, cool. It's just kind of like stick your finger in the air, like, he's in charge today. No, he's not. Like that's all they're doing. Of course he's in charge. You know what, John, what they're doing, we all know what they're doing is they're too afraid to make it look like Trump is not in control or in charge. Yeah. And we know he's not. Yes. Elon is.
Yes. Okay, well, that said, that's all the time we have for the first hour of the show, but we have a lot more to talk about, including those polls coming up in the aftermath, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Aftermath, one and all. Lots more to talk about. I do want to start with a couple of comments though, including a comment I just saw on YouTube. Says, no, John, it's not like stopping the Amazon delivery to your house. It's rerouting it to Elon Musk and Trump's houses after you paid for it. Exactly, that's 100% what it is, you're right. Queen Victoria says in a super chat, because of Fran's Disney reference, this administration is Yzma? I've never seen Emperor's New Groove, so I don't know that name. It's no concern of mine if your family has food. You should have thought of that before you became peasants. Great, that's a great line. I haven't seen that one though. And Nick the Silver Flame Dragon says, I know Fran likes to pronounce D-O-G-E like doggy, but in my mind, it sounds more like when Homer Simpson says dough.
Yeah, dough.
Well, considering they keep firing people and having to rehire them, maybe dough does fit.
Okay, wait, sorry. I just had a question because I know we're gonna talk about Jasmine Crockett, but someone just told me that maybe she pronounced Doge doggy as well, and I was getting really excited.
Did she?
Yeah,
I've been trying to make it a thing. Like I've credited you, I think, on the main show yesterday, but I called it doggy.
It is doggy. I'm sorry, it's doggy.
It's whatever it is. It's stupid. It needs to stop. But okay, and fine. Let's see. 2 more comments. Jezebel's sister says, I just saw Fran on Pierce Morgan. She was amazing. Way to go, Franny.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
And
head
Long
over to
Beach
my
Dragon.
channel and watch the breakdown of that.
Yes. And Long Beach Dragon says, thankful Thursdays because every appearance of Franny is like Thanksgiving. Oh, very sweet. Okay, well, with that said, let's jump into some more news. Jasmine Crockett, in terms of her rhetoric, in terms of her fire, is one of the few Democrats in Congress that actually seems to get the moment that we're living in. And she demonstrated that recently on The View, where she shut down former Trump aide Alyssa Farah Griffin, who tried to deliver some good news, which we're gonna fact check as well. But I liked Jasmine Crockett's response, which you'll see here.
He right now has a 53% approval rating. It's higher than it's ever been. 70% believe that he's fulfilling his promises, and 45% believe Democrats should be more moderate. What do you take away? I think there's a lot to make of those numbers, but what's your takeaway from that?
My takeaway is just like the election. We've got to do better at education. People don't understand, but you will understand when those hospitals in rural America start closing down even more. You will understand when you don't have your Social Security. You will understand when your Medicaid, your Medicare goes away. You will understand as planes continue to fall out of the sky. Soon you will understand why it's important to maybe have somebody that isn't loud and ridiculous, and maybe Sleepy Joe is what we wanted because we could at least sleep at night.
Yeah.
Strong response. Look, I know Alyssa Farah Griffin, I think, at least prior to the election, used to be pretty critical of Trump. It seems like she's kind of lined up behind him, and that's why some of the numbers she was throwing around, like they're not numbers I've seen. I'm sure she's getting them from somewhere. But
54%.
I haven't
I've seen
that.
48.
48 was the Emerson thing. Well, Gallup says overall job approvals at 45. I don't know if Gallup's allowed on The View, but so that's 45. And then you can see that his positions and all these policies also are more disproved than they are approved. That's immigration, foreign affairs, the economy, foreign trade, the situation in Ukraine, the situation in the Middle East, all of them. And by the way, okay, I apologize. Our producers are too good sometimes. They're multiple steps ahead of me. The 53% she's referenced was Gallup 2 weeks ago. Why is she using the old numbers? And by the way, if you want to mention those old numbers, you should. You know why? Because it is amazing if in a 2-week span, he drops from 53 to 44%.
Yeah.
That's a massive drop. And I'm glad to see it. And by the way, a couple weeks ago, I showed you not only what people think about Trump now, but I showed you his historic approval rating in the first year of his presidency and how fast it dropped. And I told you he's being way more aggressive this time around. And so the numbers are likely to drop even faster. And we're already seeing it. This is faster than I even expected to see. Now, we're gonna go to other numbers in a little bit, but I do wanna also talk a little bit about Jasmine Crockett and the way that she addressed that. I don't know what your evaluation of Jasmine Crockett is as a messenger for the Democrats or whatever, but I thought that was pretty effective, considering that the panel in general seemed to have lined up behind the idea that Trump is super popular.
I love Jasmine Crockett. I think she is so perfect for this moment. And I think the way that she is relentless and she's unapologetic, she's not ceding any ground around the DEIA BS. I feel like she is what we need more of. Here's my only problem with Jasmine. I don't obviously think she is, as progressive or as left as I might want. And I think that her defense of Joe Biden, maybe Sleepy Joe was good because we all go to sleep. It's a good line, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, the latest polls have Quinnipiac says Donald Trump's at 45%. Democrats are at 21%. Republicans are at 40, but Democrats are at 21% approval rating. This is the question that if you really want to be a leader in the Democratic Party, you have to be willing to actually criticize your own side. It gets you points, people trust you, and again, we have to stop operating the way MAGA operates, which is if you step out of line, then you're out of the party or you're terrible or you want everyone to, crumble. No, the dissent, the criticism, it makes us stronger. And so I think she really needs to say, look, status quo, business as usual is not going to cut it. But I do think she's right, John, that people are gonna have to start feeling
yeah,
I hate to say this, but I've been feeling for the last week like we're gonna have to feel these impacts if people are gonna be prodded to actually fight for things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, federal workers. Like we're gonna have to fight for it, and unless you're feeling it, sadly, you may not have a big impetus to fight it. And I hate that.
I'm gonna give you a little bit of hope, okay? In just a moment. And I will say, I don't want people to have to feel the impact. I will say they're going to feel the impact. It will be unavoidable.
We already have.
Would you like to make eggs someday? I know I have fond memories of scrambled eggs. Oh, someday.
Would you like to fly? Would you like to fly safely? I mean, eggs are maybe a little bit, that's whatever, but
exactly. Well, and I will also I'm gonna close by saying the Democrats are at 21% approval rating. Madam Webb was at 26. Craven the Hunter was at 35. You're less popular than Madam Webb? Damn. Anyway, let's turn now to perhaps a little bit of hope. It's taken less than 1 month for MAGA supporters to seem to get that, some of those promises that Donald Trump made, I don't think he meant it, but even if he did, he's not making good on it. So his job approval has already fallen since the start of the term, less than 1 month ago, 3% overall in 1 month, which is amazing. Only 32% of respondents approved of his performance, specifically on inflation, which we were told and I believed was like the main thing in the last election, okay? Joe Biden isn't doing enough on inflation, so we have to turn to Trump. Oh, wait, that was a terrible idea. He sucks on inflation, only 32% approve of it. But if you go to approving of the handling of the economy overall, he's already dropping on that too. So here's the last 3 presidential terms. So Trump was sort of middling, slightly above, slightly below 50 points. Joe Biden started off higher, went down. Obviously, it's the pandemic, there's inflation, all of that. Trump started off a good bit higher, not reaching where he'd been before. And just in 1 month, he's already lost a couple points off of that. And then his key thing, he would tell you he can't control inflation or whatever, even though he said Joe Biden controlled it. So I now place the blame on him. But you know what he can control? The tariffs that he is needlessly putting into place. And those are also wildly unpopular. Only 41% of respondents agree with his tariff policy, 54% disagree. And so that's before he's even done a lot of it. He backed off on Mexico and he backed off on Canada because they gave him a bunch of stuff that they'd already agreed 2 months ago or whatever, making him look like a doink. But assuming that he does actually put those into effect and people start to feel the effect of it, more inflation, all of that, that 41% will probably go down even more. And so I know that we're only 1 month in. This is premature. Sean O'Brien tells us we should wait for 3 more months or whatever. But his numbers are already going down, Francesca, even amongst Republican voters. What do you think? Feel some hope, Hawkeye.
I guess so. Hawkeye, Christ, I don't understand all of your references. But yeah, man, this is good, obviously. And it is, again, this is what we voted for, / not the majority of Americans, / why didn't we have a runoff election? He didn't even get a majority of the vote. Most democracies do that. I think this also shows that messaging has been working, John. The one thing that we've also seen in the last month is Democrats out there talking. Because their constituents are like, what the hell? Why aren't you talking? Why aren't you explaining this? And I think hammering the message that tariffs means inflation on everyday prices, that not addressing bird flu means, the eggs are still gonna be going up in prices, like that has been really important. But it's like, where was this fire before? We need to be hammering this constantly. And yes, like, look at that graph is insane. The fact that inflation started at 39% at the, just like down, and bing. And you're like, yeah, because everyone is bracing. And when you get rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, you allow corporations to gouge Americans to whatever tune they want. To when John was last on my show, we talked to David Dayan, who's telling us all about, personalized pricing. What does that mean? It means that you might go into a store and they can track you. They know how much money you make, and so they're giving you a different price on eggs than someone who makes less money than you. Or just because they know you got paid on a Friday, they're gonna charge you more. So it is insane, and yes, it is going to get worse.
I 100% agree. I'm curious, where do you think end of the year? Where do you think his approval rating is at?
Ooh, what are we at? 45 now?
He's at 40, I think 45 in that. We'll say Gallup.
I mean, unless he starts cutting direct checks to the American people, I'm looking at 21. I'm looking at below 30. I'm looking below 30.
I'm thinking.
I don't know how polls work though.
35, 36, because I think there's at least like 29% of the country, like he could walk up and unload a shotgun shell into their torso, and their dying breath would be, "I still love you."
Wait, but so Biden was left at what, 37%? We know that, right?
Well, because somewhere around there.
Okay.
Because Democrats actually can lose faith in their leaders. Republicans,
that's right.
With them until they're
That's
dead.
Right.
Anyway, okay, well, we're gonna move on in 1 second. I just want to read one comment from Occam's Taser, who says, I believe John is referencing Andrew Hawkeye, the 23rd president of the United States. That's what it was. It was Andrew Hawkeye. Anyway, with that said, okay, let's have a little bit of fun for just a minute with this. I want to show you a clip, and I want you to tell me if it reminds you of anything. Take a look at this.
We're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars advertising how bad drugs are so that kids don't use them, that they chew up your brain, they destroy your teeth, your skin, your everything.
That's a good idea, because kids don't know that. They've never heard that the drugs are bad. They've never heard that this is your brain on drugs. We should definitely throw hundreds of millions of dollars into that. What could possibly go wrong, or more likely not change at all except for the wasted money? Look, I had to go to DARE assemblies back when I was a kid. I mentioned on the show earlier, I won an essay contest about DARE. It's a massive waste of money. And so I think a lot of people, that'll be their first reaction is, dude, why are you gonna waste hundreds of millions of dollars? Do you know how many USAID trans comic books we could fund with that? Again, just to sarcastically point out that they talk about waste and fraud and abuse, and then they're just gonna do it again. But more importantly, this isn't just a waste of money, okay? Where do you think this money's gonna go? Who do you think is gonna have the contracts to make these stupid anti-drug ads? Christians, definitely. Where are they gonna run these ads? You don't think that there's a chance they're gonna put $100 million worth of ads in ad spending into Twitter to place these?
Yeah, right next to DraftKings and make your sex last longer. Goodness,
those are good things. Is after you waste all of your family's money on DraftKings or whatever, you're definitely gonna want to go all night. But anyway, yeah. So it's not only a waste of money. This is almost certainly gonna end up being a corrupt waste of money. And before you comment, I just want to remind everyone: drugs are bad. Okay, you can't get ahead with drugs, except for this guy who's done pretty well for himself.
And I was at the bottom of my class. I started doing heroin. I went to the top of my class. Suddenly I could sit still. and I could read.
It sounds like you had undiagnosed ADHD, you dumbass. You did heroin for your ADHD. Now you want to rip ADHD meds away from kids so they can't focus in class. You're gonna get, no, but literally, John, this is the point I was making on Piers Morgan, and I need to make it again here because we need to understand that might be a joke. Oh, I did heroin, but that is exactly what's going to happen because it's not only that that Donald Trump wants to have commercials promoting, saying, oh, just say no to drugs, They also want to make it much harder to get access to psychiatric meds, right?
Yep.
Like ADHD meds, like Adderall, things that actually Donald Trump loves himself, but of course he'll have his own supply. And when you rescind people's access to meds that they were already on, whether it's painkillers, whether it's psychiatric meds, whether it's antidepressants, often their answer is to go to the streets to get street drugs because you can 100%. Always get street drugs, right? And or you're gonna have a whole new market of a black market, talk about the cartels that are gonna make money in dealing things like Adderall or antidepressants on the black market, making it incredibly unsafe. So it's very funny that he's like, oh, heroin, when he probably should have been on Adderall. But it's like, no, but actually people might start and kids might start seeking street drugs in order if they cannot get access to their prescribed medication.
Yeah, no, 100%. I 100% agree. He's in charge of our healthcare. It's insane. I love that like Donald Trump is like, oh, you know who I'm putting in charge of all this? The dude who is reminiscing fondly about his heroin days. Oh, also, drug dealers should be murdered by the state. We should murder all the people who gave RFK Jr. his hits over the years. Absolute mess. But you're totally right about what effect this is going to have, and similar with the bans on abortions and all that.
Yep.
They're not necessarily stopping the behavior. They're just making it easier to get the richer you are and more dangerous and outside of the bounds of the legal system if you're a regular person. Okay, with that, we have enough time, I think, for one more story. Kide has been a member for 4 full years, though, says, hiya from Finland, kind of terrified about your hot poop of a government's actions affecting Europe, closest to being in war since 1945. Yeah, look, I'm not an expert on the former Soviet states or whatever, but I have seen Finland thrown around as one of the states that now has to be a little bit more worried that they could become, the next target after all of this. I'd be very worried about that. Everything that we're seeing out of Donald Trump, JD Vance, and Elon Musk in Europe is just horrifying. Okay, with that said, let's talk about one more thing. Trans people have been the focus of the right for a number of years. If you're a right-wing commentator, you can't go 5 minutes without thinking about a trans person, how mad you are that they exist. But let that not delude you into thinking that trans people are the only members of the LGBTQ plus community that are going to be targeted by conservatives, because they're not. And some of the old moves of the right are being rebooted for the new MAGA era. And so we have Missouri AG Andrew Bailey here, who is now pushing to bring back conversion therapy in his state after it had been banned. So if you're not familiar with this, it's the horrendous practice of trying to either psychologically or with pharmaceuticals or with basically literal torture, try to force people to pretend to be straight for a little bit or whatever. So that's the idea. And thankfully, because that's horrendous, that's been banned in general. Well, he doesn't want that. He wants to take us back. And so he's filed a lawsuit on behalf of Christian counselors seeking to overturn these bans in Kansas City and Jackson County. The bans, passed back in 2019 and 2023 respectively, forbid practitioners from trying to change the sexual orientation or gender identity of minors. But Bailey's lawsuit argues that the bans violate the counselors' First Amendment rights. See, the counselors have a right to torture you into pretending to be straight. You don't have any rights whatsoever to your preferences, your orientation, your identity. That's radical for you to think you have rights, but Christians definitely do. And so this is from the lawsuit. They say sometimes the minors ask for help identifying with their sex or redirecting their sexual desires towards the opposite sex. And I can't rule out that that has never happened before. I think in practice what he means is the parents try to make that happen. That's what that's about. The bans require the counselors to provide counseling services to adults and children who wish to affirm views about sex and gender that conflict with the counselor's religious beliefs. And again, the counselor's religious beliefs are, at the end of the day, the only thing here that actually matters. Government bureaucrats should not insert themselves into private counseling conversations, much less censor and redirect the exploration of truth on some of the most contentious issues of our day, gender identity and sexual orientation. Okay, so it would be censorship to stop them from torturing a young kid into pretending to be straight for a while. But you cannot use most of the words he just used in government documents. You'll be fired if you use those words. Some of these words you literally can't post on Twitter because of the censorship on that platform. And so when we say that this is a Christian nationalist or supremacist state, that's what this looks like. Your rights are irrelevant when the rights of Christians are being considered. Your rights in terms of orientation or sexual preference or whatever, they don't count for literally anything. You might be persecuted just for identifying wrong, but they have endless rights to change your mind, even through psychological and physical torture. Francesca, what do you think?
I mean, it's just, it goes hand in hand with, I think, what a lot of purported Christians and churches have been doing now, and we know more and more for decades, right? Which is actually allowing abuse. I mean, they love abuse. They love abuse. I mean, they love targeting, obviously, gay and lesbian, transgender people. But they're also fine with targeting children, whether it's in the Catholic Church, whether it's in all the church mega churches that have pastors who have been outed as being pedophiles. Like, again, every accusation is a confession. They love this kind of stuff. Basically, what Christian nationalism wants to do also is to take us back to the time of every Netflix documentary. Like every Netflix documentary that's like, wow, this young girl was kept by her neighbor in a shed for 30 years. JD Vance and other Christian nationalists, this attorney general is like, yeah, hell yeah, that's really good. Let's go back to that. Hey, let's go back to the conversion shock therapy. Let's go back to when we sent kids who misbehaved into horribly abusive, institutions where they weren't allowed to contact their family members and scarred them and traumatized them for life and led them to suicide. Love that stuff. Like, this is really the social Darwinism of Christian nationalism, right? You are a good identity, a wrong identity, and if you're the wrong identity, we will abuse you into becoming the right one.
Yeah, and I'll close by just saying, like, look at the utter hypocrisy when they use the term free speech, depending on who you are. So if you want to sit a kid down, like lock them up basically, and just propagandize to them to try to turn them into a straight person, that is your right, your First Amendment right. If you're a female second grade teacher and you make an offhand comment that you have a wife, fired, gone, because you're trying to change the sexuality of the kid. In fact, you're probably a pedophile. You're a sexual predator, and we need to get you out of that position. So yeah, theoretically, you might have freedom of speech, assuming you believe and say the right thing under this regime. Anyway, that's unfortunately all the time we have for the show, but we have two things coming up afterwards. So every Thursday, we now put out our members' content. We're gonna be talking about what happened to a college Republican who said the wrong thing about Barron Trump. That's gonna be fun, a little light story. So that'll be going out later today. And then in 34 minutes, we're gonna be going live with our members, hangout for our tier 3 members on YouTube. Spread the word, hope to see many of you there. For now though, thank you, Francesca, as always.
Thank you.
I know you do, not only have your channel, but you also do another show on Thursdays. You wanna let people know about those?
Oh, hell yeah, America Unhinged for Zateo, youtube.com/Zateo. Every Tuesday, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific with Wajahat Ali. It'll be so great. We're gonna talk about Russia and Ukraine and Trump's very obvious backslide into being just a Putin puppet.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get started on the Zelensky thing again, but it's one of the wildest lies I think he's told in this entire run-up. But anyway, we'll talk about that more perhaps tomorrow on the show. For now though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there. We'll see you soon.